Hello and welcome to another ranking special by the Football History Boys. Today we're looking at the true legends of football, the greatest players of all time, and we're ranking them on our tier maker list. We have chosen 5 different categories today. We have the GOAT tier, the legend tier, an iconic tier, an underrated tier, and finally the best of the rest. Now, there are 4 players of which we already agreed before the video that we all know are going to go in the GOAT category. So they're already in there before we start, which are Lionel Messi, Pele, Diego Maradona and Cristiano Ronaldo. So those are already sat perfectly on top of our tier list. So this is going to be more a video to find out who's the greatest player of the rest. So shall we go through the players on the list? We have Johan Cruyff, Eusebio, Zinedine Zidane, Alfredo Di Stefano, George Best, we have Ronaldo, so R9, Paulo Maldini, Ferenc Puskas, Franz Beckenbauer, and a Welsh wildcard, the late, great John Charles. So let's get started. Before we do, though, any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to take those 4 out of the equation. We don't want to debate those 4, Messi, Ronaldo, Pele, Maradona. We know there's debates that rage constantly, particularly obviously the passion of Pele and Maradona in recent times.
Yeah.
Who was the greatest? It doesn't matter. Let's stick them all in that top tier. Let's talk about some of those other people who played such an important role on the pitch, off the pitch, in influencing the beautiful game across the world.
Of course. And if you have your own ideas, please let us know. So the tier maker link will be in the description below. So please click on it, check it out, give it a go. Let us know how you get on. Okay, let's get started then. Let's go with Zinedine Zidane.
Interesting.
Absolute icon. We did on our website, when we first started Football History Boys, we did a top 250. We put a big vote out to find who the best player of all time was. And incredibly, Zidane actually ended up winning it. Yeah. Revered by a lot. You know, we see videos pop up on Twitter, YouTube all the time. That performance against Brazil in the 2006 World Cup. Of course, unfortunately, his career now is always going to be synonymous with a headbutt, you know, and what a headbutt.
What a way to go.
As a player, though, what are we thinking?
He was incredible as a player, wasn't he? He was someone that you remember, particularly for us getting into football in the early 2000s, you knew he was good. Like, you knew that this guy was at class. Dominates in 98 and 2000 in the Euros and the World Cup. Is brilliant. He's brilliant, obviously, right up until 2006 when he leaves. Yeah. And actually made an impact as a manager too. You don't always see that.
Fantastic manager.
Yeah. Won a couple of Champions Leagues.
Three in a row.
About, you know, was it his side, was it his squad? Could anyone have done it? Those sort of debates. But actually, it's probably a very, very difficult challenge to retain a European Cup. And he was brilliant.
It is. And we've seen, you know, better managers go into massive clubs with, you know, as good as squads and achieve nowhere near as much as he has. Now,
I think he's a lot of people's favourite player as well, isn't he? That's the thing. And that video that he's in, the 21st century portrait that just focuses on him for a whole game, that is the sort of man he is that you wanted to focus on him play. So I think he definitely should be pretty high up there.
I think he should as well. I think...
Not quite in the legends.
And we've obviously seen him play a lot ourselves, haven't we?
Yeah.
Legend or iconic?
Definitely iconic.
Yeah.
It's whether you want to push him up.
I personally think Zidane is in the top 5 or 6 ever. So I think I'm going to put him into legend. I think he's an absolute legend of the game. And there's not many better than him.
Perhaps 10, give him 10 years, give him 20 years, we'll remember him even greater than he is now.
Absolutely. Right, let's throw a bit of a curveball in straight away. Let's go with Eusebio. Portuguese legend. Obviously, we didn't see him play. Nope. 1960s was his time to shine, of course. He was in that incredible Benfica side under Bela Gutmann.
Yes.
I think he won the second European Cup, didn't he? Not the first one. World Cup 1966, he is...
Golden Boot.
Yeah, Golden Boot winner, probably the best player at the tournament. Yeah. Incredible career from Mozambique, I think, isn't he? And he got, you know, Portugal, obviously his Portuguese colony at the time. They take him over and they use him as a fantastic player. What do you think in them?
I love Eusebio. I love the stories around him. I love that Benfica side, looking at it, writing about it, reading about it under Bela Gutmann. He's found, you know, through sort of funny circumstances of Bela Gutmann having a haircut and the barber popping in. While he's having his haircut, the barber says to him, "Do you know this guy from another football club?" The guy is a scout and he recommends Eusebio to him, brings him across. when you watch footage of the 60s, he is really prominent in that. As a legend of the 60s, 1966, whilst that's England's favourite tournament, he is on debut, as is Portugal, their first ever World Cup. They get to third place, and he is a golden boot. So I think he's really significant in the 60s.
And you know what? I got a bit of flack for this before. I did a football by decade, and I said my best player of the 60s was Eusebio, and some people are saying it should be Pele. But obviously Pele was amazing for Santos. But my thinking was, Pele, 62 World Cup, he's injured, he misses most of the tournament. 66 World Cup, he gets kicked out of it by defenders. So actually, the player I think who defined the decade as even more influential was probably Eusebio.
Yeah. I think put him in the icon category.
Iconic?
Yeah, definitely for me.
And I think...
Perhaps he is underrated by some, but for us, he's definitely an icon.
Yeah, I think he's an icon. Fantastic. Right, let's go on to Paulo Maldini. So let's go look at a defender, shall we? Haven't got any defenders yet. Italian defender. What a sensational player. There's not many better. Very good looking man.
Yeah, handsome chap.
Captain for AC Milan. Played there his whole career, which that's amazing.
And hundreds upon hundreds of games for them. That's just such a key figure.
And always in the starting 11. Very rarely out of it.
Yeah.
The whole of his career. Centre back, left back.
Starts in the 80s and finishes in the 2000s. To span 3 decades of football and still be so important was for me is what makes him one of the best defenders of all time. I think when you look at that.
Yeah, there's not many better, is there? Now, there is an elephant in the room, and it is his Italian career.
Yeah.
Still, brilliant. Played a lot of times for Italy.
A lot of caps.
World Cup
Not a lot of
runner-up.
success.
But he played in some fantastic squads for Italy, and he didn't win the World Cup, didn't win the Euros. Does that make his GOAT status, does it throw into question and maybe put him a bit lower down?
I think it probably does just push him slightly down for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's underrated because we know about him in our generation. And by putting him in best of the rest, we're not saying he was rubbish, not at all. It's just out of some of these guys we're going to talk about, he's probably one of the best of the rest. He's one of the best defenders of all time, but we're going to come across maybe 1 or 2 defenders that are better.
Yeah, and I think that, they're all iconic, aren't they? But I think that word, not all legends, but I think that word iconic for us is meaning they kind of defined an era of football
and
that player did.
That they played.
Yeah, so I would agree. I think best of the rest.
And that's not a slight on Maradona.
He's still in the top. He's still in the top 15 of all time here, so he's still fantastic. Right, let's go on to George Best. So the first British player on this list. Iconic for Man United. Yes. Maybe that gives it away, saying iconic there. Also, again, defined that 60s. He was called the 5th Beatle.
Yeah.
He had that coolness about him.
He lived a rock star
lifestyle. Too much. Unfortunately for him. Man United fans will go on about him forever. He went to America, played there as well, didn't he? Played for Northern Ireland quite a few times.
Never got any further really in tournaments. A little bit like when we come across some of the Welsh players or some of those players from smaller countries. Their international status is not going to be remembered as highly because they didn't get a chance to compete. Exactly. Now he did in Europe for his club, but not on a world stage, which is really at that time what pushed you into the mainstream for people, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he, of course, the European Cup winner, Man United, Ballon d'Or winner, Man United, but probably could have played there a bit longer than he did, at probably a higher level than he did.
I think if we consider, do they play an impact throughout the whole career? He doesn't go into management really, does he? He doesn't play a role in coaching. So for me, I think he's definitely iconic. Yeah. People would crucify us if we didn't say iconic.
Let's put that icon. He's an icon of 1960s football, British football. Yeah, he's an iconic player, isn't he? Okay, let's move on then. Let's go to the next player. We're going to look at Johan Cruyff. Now, this is all going to be a lot of people's favourite.
Yeah.
When we ask our Twitter followers who's the greatest of all time, a lot of them will say Johan Cruyff, even with those other 4.
Yeah.
Not just one of the best footballers, but also one of the best managers, iconic and really influential on people like Pep Guardiola and their tactical style of play. That idea of promoting the same formations in the youth team as he does with the first team and bringing that into Barcelona, which you now see in pretty much most clubs, don't you? Yeah. He won the Champions League with them, didn't he, or the European Cup at the time. What do you think?
I think it says something when a stadium's named after you, the Johan Cruyff Arena in Ajax. significant for Ajax, but equally, other than Messi, Barcelona's greatest player of all time, and one of their greatest managers. Other than
Ajax's best player as well.
Time. To be the greatest for two clubs, so to be the greatest for the Netherlands, never won a World Cup, never got across that line.
Lost the final, didn't he?
Losing against all odds, really, when they dominated that tournament. Invented the Cruyff turn, to have a move named after you. This guy is absolutely legendary, and for me, if we're pushing one into GOAT, we'll touch GOAT, but for me, he's the one that's just
he's touching a GOAT, right?
He's just about GOAT. So I put him above Zidane in terms of if we're tiering it within a tier.
Yeah, he'd be about here, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he's just on the edge, and if you want to push someone there, I would put him there.
Legend.
For me, definitely.
Okay, legend of the game. He is a legend of the game. I agree. What a player. Ajax in the 60s were a bit of a nothing club, and they, with him as that spearhead, as an 18-odd at first, 3 Champions Leagues by the mid-70s. Right, so let's go to the next player. Let's look at Ferenc Puskas. Football history, boys. Favourites. We'll probably be biased again. But one of the reasons we started the blog, reading about that 1953 Hungarian team, you can see the shirt here, really just captivated us straight away. We were so interested in it. The magical Magyars. He, of course, is captains the team, turns up at Wembley, scores that drag back goal. They beat England 6-3, and they beat him 7-1 in Hungary. Of course, though, the painful defeat in Bern, losing to West Germany 3-2. Come on, we could probably talk about him for hours. What do you think?
We could do a whole video on Puskas, and I think people modern times would know from the Puskas Award, which is the award for the FIFA Best Goal of the Year, but maybe not much more beyond him. And so for me, I think he's probably actually in that underrated category. He should be higher. He's definitely legendary, but perhaps he's underrated in people in their concept of who is Puskas. He was so important in the 50s and 60s. He was so important for that Real Madrid team that dominated in the 50s, but also for the Magyars, he was the captain. He was the guy that everything run through. Yeah,
because like you say, he did it for club and country, for Honved, and he did it for Real Madrid, of course, winning all his European Cups.
He became a bit of a statesman after his career as well. So I think
he did.
I think he's underrated because people don't remember him.
I'll tell you what's underrated. How it's proven is that they called it the Puskas Award because they didn't want him to be forgotten. He's on FIFA now. He's one of the icons, which helps the younger generation understand who he is. He's underrated, isn't he?
But he should be.
I mean, we'd put him in the go if it was up to us. Right, underrated then, Ferenc Puskas. Maybe will that be a theme now with those players from pre-1960? Let's go on to his strike partner then at Real Madrid, Alfredo Di Stefano, the man of many countries. When Di Stefano's thrown into conversation in Europe, Western Europe, he's revered, isn't he? They think he is up there with the best ever. He won the ultimate Ballon d'Or, didn't he? I think he won the special Ballon d'Or that they created, I think, in maybe 2000, for the greatest Ballon d'Or winner ever. Of course, he had this fantastic career for Real Madrid. He won all his European Cups. He played, I think, in Colombia as well, Argentina too. Played for them internationally as well, those two, and Spain. What do you reckon, Di Stefano?
I think he's misremembered, and probably is in the underrated category along with Puskas, because televised football wasn't as big back then.
Of course.
And so when you think about those people who have been remembered, like some will come on to perhaps 1970 onwards, people like Cruyff, who people in this country saw, people across the world saw, maybe he wasn't seen as much. But if you talk to a Spaniard, not just a Real Madrid fan, but any Spaniard, they would say how important Di Stefano is. They would say how important he is because he could have joined Barcelona equally. He was very, very close to joining Barcelona.
Yeah, I think they had an agreement, didn't they?
As much as he did, and obviously went on to win 5 European Cups in a row with Real Madrid. So incredibly.
Well, there's a famous picture, and it's of I think it's Kubala's farewell game at Barcelona, and both Puskas and Di Stefano playing it, wearing Barcelona shirts, and they were like, this could have easily been the case. It could have been Barcelona having Kubala, Di Stefano, and Puskas. Instead, it was just Kubala, and Kubala's a statue of him outside the new camp. But they went to Real Madrid, and Real Madrid, became that ultimate side in the 50s, 60s. Right then, Di Stefano, underrated?
I think he's underrated. I think he's underrated.
Yeah.
I think if a Spaniard watching this would say he should be higher up.
Yeah, and if you have that opinion, let us know in the comments or put it on the tier maker yourself and send it over to us. Right. Two more players before our wild card. So let's have a look at Franz Beckenbauer. Now, Franz Beckenbauer, of course, unfortunately passed away just before we've recorded this video. He's in the news a lot now as a result, which is obviously good for us to see and see what he did and have influence on the game. Very similar to Cruyff in the fact that he was a player and a manager. Successful manager, won the World Cup with West Germany. He is the best defender of all time, isn't he?
Yes.
What do we think then?
Another one who, when you speak to anyone who saw him play, would say what a player he was. If you're building a greatest 11, he's your first centre back.
He's on there, isn't he?
He's your first centre back.
Always.
There's no debate. You can debate the rest of the positions on there, but he is your first centre back on that list. And I think he's so significant. Plays a role in 74 in terms of West Germany lose to East Germany in the group stages, and he turns that side around. He changes the attitude of the side and basically takes over management as a player manager from Helmut Schön. He then wins the World Cup as a manager, one of only 3 people to do that too. To win it as a player and as a manager. Changed the game, really, the Beckenbauer role, the libero role. An Italian role, really. He makes it his own.
He does.
I think for me, he's got to be in the legendary category, and that is quite rare for a defender to get that.
It is. Yeah.
Normally goals are what push you up a list.
I do agree, and of course, he captains in 74. He also wins 72 Euros as well. Gets the final in 76. So I think he wins the Ballon d'Or that year as well, or maybe 77. So he's a defender who's won the Ballon d'Or, which doesn't happen a lot at all. I think it's just him and Cannavaro maybe. So. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Up into the legend category. That looks good to me. Right, we've got one more player before our final wild card. So if you're a Welsh fan, hopefully you've stuck around to the end or you've skipped to the end, but whatever. Right, Ronaldo, R9. Maybe as a result of his namesake, I don't know, there might be a bit of a split opinion on him now.
Yeah, and post-career, people, call him now sort of Fat Ronaldo, things like that. Misremembering his career, he was phenomenal, and perhaps we caught the tail end of that.
And that's his nickname, isn't it? Yeah.
Early 2000s, he's sort of coming towards the tail end. But I remember him, 2002 World Cup, my first World Cup, and I was gripped by this guy. He had the hair at that time, didn't he? That funny little hair. Scored obviously throughout that tournament and was brilliant.
Twice in the final.
He was incredible. Obviously, 98, he collapsed before the final. And there was the whole thing of would they have won the World Cup there had he played. So he played such an impact, obviously made an impact in Europe as well. He was a Brazilian but made such an impact in European football.
What a player for PSV, Barcelona, Inter, Real Madrid, later on in Milan as well. He's an incredible player, and I think when we started watching football, he was probably the player we knew first, wasn't he? Yeah. Oh, who's the best player? Ronaldo or Zidane? It was those two, wasn't it? That we all knew
Started
about.
Playing video games, and he was the guy who was.
He had his own game. Ronaldo v football. What a game that was. So that's gonna be a hard one to rate now because a lot of our followers watch a lot of football in the 90s, and they'll probably want to put him right up there. However,
I for me, he's icon just behind those 3 there that we've got: Zidane, Cruyff, and Beckenbauer.
Yeah, I'll put him icon because I do feel like the 90s football is kind of defined by him. Yes. He is like the best player of that decade. So I think he's iconic because he basically,
he
90s is all about him.
Like that. He was on your TV, he was on Coca-Cola cans or Pepsi cans. You saw him places, didn't you?
And if he didn't have so many injuries, I think he'd be up there with the GOATs, to be honest. He had those. I think is one of the physios for Inter described it as the worst injury they'd ever seen when he did his knee. But there you go. Right, finally then, John Charles, Welsh legend, 1958 World Cup. Of course, he didn't play against Pele's Brazil, and if he did, I'm sure Wales would have won the whole thing. But that's another story. John Charles, then, what you got to say?
So one of Wales' greatest ever exports. Obviously, it's challenged by Gareth Bale now, isn't it? Gareth Bale, one of the most successful British exports of all time to European football with what he did with Real Madrid, and was fantastic there. John Charles was the original. He was a trailblazer. He did it in the 50s, a time where it was pretty unheard of in reality. Moved from Leeds to Juventus, and he's one of Juventus and was voted Juventus' greatest ever foreign player. Still remembered so fondly there. Was weirdly a centre-half and a striker.
And a really good one.
And both positions, so important for Wales. You speak to a Welsh fan, they put him in the GOAT category probably. In terms of his impact on the game, he did play a role in British football. He was remembered really fondly. Perhaps He's underrated maybe by some. Perhaps he's just the best of the rest.
I think we'll put him in best of the rest purely because he's our wild card, and we just put him in a touch to basically bring in some Welsh stuff. And I don't think he is at the level of the ones above him. But yeah, what a player! We're going to put him in best of the rest. Are you happy with our tier making?
I am. I think people may disagree, but that's what football.
I think people will definitely disagree. But there we go. Don't worry about it. Let us know. Do it yourself and send it over to us. We'd love to hear what you all have to say. So if you want to do that, please follow us on our Twitter at TFHBS. That's probably the best way to do it. Yeah. Instagram as well at the Football History Boys. You can go on the website, footballhistoryboys.com, or just comment in the comments below. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again for the next one. Thank you so much. Now, you can have a go yourself at managing some of these legends, these greatest players of all time, by heading over to Retro Football Management. This app is what's sponsoring today's video. We've had a go ourselves. We tried managing Diego Maradona's Napoli to try and win the Scudetto in 1985, or even Pele's Santos. You have a chance to do all those things and more on Retro Football Management. The link to it is in the description below. Please check it out.